So today we're going to cover quite a few topics that we decided are directly related to handling the COVID-19 challenge. And we did choose this word quite carefully. We do think it's a challenge that we will overcome if we build the necessary skills or if we uncover the necessary skills to deal with the current situation. So we're going to cover approximately 5 topics today, and we're going to take this webinar one at a time to cover these topics. And I'm going to start with the first topic, which is dealing with uncertainty. So I'm going to say a few things about uncertainty to get us started, because in fact, this current situation is filled with uncertainty about how this virus is going to spread, uncertainty about how long this lockdown will last, whether we're going to have another lockdown in the future, uncertainty about our own health, about our loved ones' health. There's a lot of question marks around this situation. And in understanding uncertainty, we need to kind of clarify that there is something about uncertainty that we humans generally experience as particularly threatening. In fact, research shows that those of us who really hate uncertain situations and uncertain times, such as the one that we're currently living in, usually may even have certain negative thoughts or certain ways of thinking about uncertainty and about the possible consequences of uncertainty. So it's important to state that different people can view uncertainty in different ways, but it's very likely that some of these ways of viewing uncertainty might be unhelpful. And I wanted to cover a few of those unhelpful ways of dealing with uncertainty or thinking about uncertainty. So the first not so helpful way of viewing uncertainty is it's unfair to feel uncertain. So this idea that experiencing this uncertainty is something that is unfair is quite common, because sometimes living through an uncertain time may kind of inspire this feeling of unfairness. Why my generation? Why is it happening now that I am attending uni? Why me? Why I was planning on having the best summer of my life? Why in this summer? And these are the kinds of questions that tend to show up. And in fact, sometimes people might even say that they would prefer to know what will happen in the future, even if what they told them is going to happen in the future was something negative. So that they prefer to know what's going to happen in the future if it's not good, even if it's not good news. Knowing the future in that way, even if the future is negative, would provide that desirable sense of control. We all want to have a sense of control, but for those of us that really hate uncertainty, we really strive for that feeling of knowledge of what's going to happen in the future. Now, the problem with this thought that it's unfair to feel uncertain is that clearly it's not possible to know what the future holds. And the fact that when we constantly focus on this idea of unfairness, this might actually result in us feeling additional feelings, such as irritation or desperation. So it kind of seems to enhance the feelings that we're experiencing. It goes beyond anxiety and adds additional challenging emotions. So that's the first stance towards uncertainty that isn't particularly helpful. The second way of thinking that isn't particularly helpful is that uncertain events will always turn out very negatively. Now, sometimes, at times of uncertainty, we might hone into this thought that ambiguous situations will only end badly, because we don't know what's going to happen. It means that something negative is going to happen. Now, this point of view, as you can see clearly, is a very one-sided point of view, because in fact, we know from our history, our human history, that even very catastrophic events in this planet can always have some positive outcomes coming out of them. Some useful results in terms of development of the humankind or learning that comes out of adversity sometimes. In addition to that, even if something negative does come out of uncertainty, it is likely that our minds will catastrophize these possible outcomes and only focus on the negative or exaggerated likelihoods. And this might mean that we might end up feeling extremely anxious or panicky. So, to sum up, this idea that uncertain events will always lead into something negative, it's not a very helpful way of viewing uncertain situations. And third unhelpful way is this thought that I will not be able to cope with negative outcomes. Now, sometimes people might think that they will be unable to handle those possible negative outcomes if they do happen. This means that people sometimes may not trust themselves in dealing with trouble, with negative emotions, or with the challenges in life. This type of thinking prevents you from identifying your own skills, from finding out your resources, and it leaves you skilled, hopeless, and fearful. So, to wrap this up, it's important for us to be aware of our types of thinking and the way in which we perceive the current uncertain situation. And if we notice that, in fact, we're predicting that negative things are going to happen, or that we're predicting that we won't be able to cope with the difficulties, or that we are kind of focusing this idea of fairness, then we might kind of acknowledge that this way of seeing things may not be particularly helpful to us. Now, those of us, and there are many of us that are allergic to uncertainty, so those of us who are allergic to uncertainty, we will come up with a series of strategies to avoid situations that trigger anxiety, that trigger uncertainty. It makes our lives easier to avoid uncertain situations. So we always tend to avoid things that we fear. We tend to avoid challenges that leaves us questioning our skills. We tend to avoid confusing relationships or confusing situations. And in the short term, these might result in feelings of relief or calmness. But in the long term, these might increase our allergy to uncertainty. Now, in the current climate of COVID-19, avoidance is very relative, because in a way, we can physically avoid the illness through social isolation, but the uncertainty that comes out of the general situation is actually unavoidable, because it comes and finds us through the news, through social media, and the fact that our goals in life are now in a constant state of flux. We're not progressing in the direction that we wanted. So we can't really avoid. So we can't really rely on our old strategies of avoiding things, that are uncertain and confusing. So what do we do? Now, one of the things that I wanted us to go through together is to learn how to distinguish what we can and what we cannot control. So what can I and what I cannot control during this health crisis? And I'd like to kind of invite you to discuss this a little bit with me over chat. So what do you think you can control during this health crisis? And what do you think you cannot control? I'll be kind of picking through chat and see if there's any ideas before I give you my perspective on this. Okay, so excellent. So there's a point of view here that we can control our actions, and that we probably cannot control the outcome. And I would say that that's a very good point, but we would still need to define what outcome we're thinking of. If it's the outcome of the spread of the virus or the outcome of other people's health status, clearly that's something that we can't control. So it's important to make that distinction. In fact, this idea that we can control our actions is quite on topic, because what we know is that the things that we can control are the things that fall within the sphere of what do I do with my body, what do I say with my voice, and where do I direct my attention to? And those are the three kind of areas in which we will be focusing on in this webinar. So to kind of clarify a little bit my perspective on this in terms of what we can and cannot control in the current climate. So clearly, there's a set of things that we cannot control, and those are the duration of this crisis, the impact that this crisis will have on the economy, our social freedom in the current climate. Other people's attitudes is an important one because we might choose to engage with certain actions that are positive or helpful to us. Other people might choose, however, to focus on negative aspects or might choose to take psychologically a different stance, one that is not particularly helpful. In addition to this, we cannot control the travel restrictions, and what is actually quite difficult emotionally is that we can't really control the health of our loved ones. Even if we would like to make sure that our loved ones are safe, there's still a question mark to how much control we have within that area. Now, what can we control? And this is the area that we really want to focus on, is connecting with our loved ones, eating healthily, doing more exercise, engaging with positive activities. We'll expand on this in a while. Washing our hands, doing relaxation, helping those whom we can, learning something new, showing courage, and caring for something or someone. We will expand on these ideas in a moment. So how can we better distinguish when it is useful and where it is useful to focus our attention when we are troubled by a thought? Okay, so I'm just going through a message on chat, and with which I agree quite a lot. So if our minds are allergic to uncertainty, it is very likely that we will have a lot of worrying thoughts go through our minds. So we need to be able to distinguish which of these thoughts are useful for us to focus on and which are not so useful. So I've come up with three questions that can guide us, okay, towards choosing which are those thoughts that we can focus on in terms of working through a problem-solving approach, and which are thoughts that are not particularly useful in giving our attention to. So the first question that I'd like us to kind of go through is this problem something that I can directly affect with my actions or my behavior? If the answer is yes, then I need to go through a problem-solving approach, which we will see in a moment, and specify the steps that I will take. If the answer is no, I can just stop here and ask myself, what can I control right now, and direct my attention to focusing elsewhere. The second question that I'd like us to kind of go through, if we haven't stopped at step one, is this problem something I can directly tackle or prepare right now? And when I say right now, I mean today, tomorrow, or the near future. If the answer is yes, then I go back to my problem-solving plan, which we'll see in a moment. If the answer is no, then this problem belongs to the future, and we want to make a note of it and return to it when it's more relevant. So we stop the process here. And then we go to our third question, which is, do I have the necessary skills and resources to approach this problem right now? And again, if the answer is yes, I rally up the resources to solve the problem. But if the answer is no, then I need to get support, I need to get more skills, and I return back to step two in terms of preparation with regards to this problem. Okay, that's from me for the moment. I'm just handing over the presentation to my colleague, who will take you through problem solving if a particular worry is something that we can work with in that way.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Thank you, Vasiliki. What you said was important and very interesting. I'm just going to go over, as you said, the problem-solving part, where when we decide that something we are facing, we can take an action and we can actually do something about it. How do we choose how to proceed, and what solutions we can figure out. So, for example, we can predict the problems you will face. There are some problems that during this period is very easy for us to predict that we might face in the future and during this situation. So, for example, I chose like 4 possible problems. If you have any other ideas, please do share them. So, for example, I thought that maybe a college student might need a quiet place to concentrate. Living with a family or with some other people, it might make it very hard to concentrate because of many things going on. There's a lot of interaction, or there might be several college students in one household struggling to fit into that house office at the same time to attend their online classes. So what happens then? Or sometimes I lack motivation to do stuff. You know, it's very hard when we are getting out of our routine to find the motivation to actually carry out our normal routine with the activity that we used to have. There are some times that we feel like we cannot get out of bed. And, you know, if this is like 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, that'd be fine. But what about this goes on for longer periods of time, and then we actually find ourselves very unproductive? Sometimes I do lack purpose in my routine. It feels like my routine is stale. It feels like my routine is very hard to maintain. And actually, I do not have enough creativity or imagination to figure how I'm going to do all these roles. So what happens then? Personally, I chose to elaborate on the lack of purpose in my routine. And this is the example I'll be using in the presentation to kind of give us a more hands-on idea on how to approach with the problem-solving skills I will be presenting. So let's take, for example, I lack purpose in my routine. The first step is to predict that this might be a possible problem. And if I predict this possible problem, it makes it easier to make actions before it actually happens. But what can you actually do? There are always 2 sides on the coin of the coin, they say, right? So I symbolize these sides as the pros and cons, the good, the bad. So if every solution has a positive part and a negative part. To create a new routine, let's say, if this is the solution we're choosing, I can study by day, I can do activities in the afternoon, and I can relax by the evening. So what are some pros and cons that exist into the solution that I found to solve my problem? The pros will be, it will be more predictable. So it's going to flow easier for me from point A to point B, because it will be something that I will have adjusted myself into. It will be more planned. I can divide equally my roles, so I can focus around on the things that I have to do, on the things that demand me to remain productive. I can study enough. I can be the active person I am and focus on the hobbies that I have. I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure we have many creative people in this webinar. Some of you might paint, some of you might do gardening, some of you might be really into sports. Do that part that rejuvenates me. And at the same time, attend to my need to relax and recompose myself, recharge my batteries. So the cons in that will be, it will be difficult to be spontaneous. So what happens, like, if I want to sleep in one day and I don't want to wake up by 8:30 or 9 o'clock? Yeah, that will be the negative part. That's true. And the other negative part will be, it will be easier for me to feel disappointed if I fall behind on my goals. And So if I have a really strict structure, these are the the possible negatives that I will be facing. So once again, these might be problems that might require more solutions, to figure out. However, we can see that this solution has more pros than cons. So it might be something that we need to take into consideration to find the ideal solution to our problem. Sometimes we need to problem solve piece by piece. So let's say, again, if the example would be to plan my new routine, and as I mentioned earlier, it would be in 3 different sections, roughly as I presented. So how can I do that, my daily routine, piece by piece? How to start in the day? The first part would be to find a quieter place available to attend my online classes and complete my coursework. So I am trying to be as productive as possible by tackling something really practical. How can I study if I'm not able to concentrate correctly, right? So that would be the first part. I need to be concentrated. How do I achieve that? I find a quieter place in the household. Get up a certain time, so that ensures that I have the morning ahead of me to study if I want to study during the day, or attempt to finish at least X amount of coursework. I mean, this is up to everyone. For somebody, it will be 2 chapters. For somebody else, will be a specific online exercise. So that depends. So you see, first part and first step, we have thought about it thoroughly, and we have attempted to resolve every little detail on how to help us make that come true. How about the activities I want to do by the day? So let's say make plans on using my text in regards the allowance I have for going out during quarantine, for physical activities, let's say 3 times a week or 2 times a week. I mean, that really depends on you. So I will be investing some of the time I'll be going out to be physically active. Or I can choose among the other lists that this seminar has provided us. So there are so many activities that maybe I can choose from. And it really doesn't have to be something really lengthy, but sometimes it's really important to break our routine into sections. Or how to relax by night. How can I attempt that? How can I achieve that? Attempt to make something that soothes me, take a shower, drink some tea, or watch a movie. So it really helps me actually get into that mood if I know what I will be actually doing. How will I relax myself if I jumped into, oh, I'm going to study now? That's not really helpful, and that doesn't really help me recharge myself. So it's very important to figure out what helps me achieve what I'm trying to achieve into the solution I found. Like, my goal is very important. All right. So another big thing that I think college students are facing right now, living with the parents. A home environment can cause many frictions, maybe frictions that you have gotten yourself out from, or you haven't faced in such an intensity for a long time. Maybe you have the availability to stay by yourself or with a roommate. But now situations possibly have brought you back to your parents' house, I think. Some of you might not. But for those who have, and are experiencing this situation, I think that sometimes it can be really hard and really frustrating and really chaotic. So what can I do to make things easier within the household, with my parents, with my siblings, with what I have to do, with whatever is going on, with whatever each person's mood or attitude is at that given time? Yeah, you're right. There are so many factors you have to face. So first of all, it's very important to communicate. How do I communicate effectively with someone? I statements are the most functional ways of communicating something that I need and something that even has given me a certain emotion. So let's say, Dad and Mom, this is a statement where somebody will be asking or demanding something within the house. I feel that setting up routinely my studying, it helps me get concentrated. So I would like to ask to use the home office for that. So this statement really shows the motivation, what the person is experiencing, and the solution that they found for that. If we get into situations where we are thinking, oh, my parents should have thought to allow me into the home office or every other solution, this is not us taking control or asking for something that might be might be possible for us to happen and help us into a decision we're trying to make. Around the house, you will find a lot of arguments going on. It will be an argument maybe for a shoe, or I don't know, like somebody cooked beans when they want a steak, I don't know. But it's very important to choose what argument to get into. You know, not all arguments are important. Prioritize what you need to invest your energy in. By getting into arguments and frictions that maybe are meaningless, or they're not very important, or they might not get anywhere, it might cause us to feel more emotionally drained, and at the same time stuck up our anger, and it's not really helping our experiencing living with our parents. Sometimes to get into the other person's shoes is also very important. The other person is the person who they are, and we can only control our actions, as somebody said earlier in the chat room. That's exactly right. So if the other person might be experiencing something different than we are, it's beyond us to change that for them. But it's very important for us to kind of make a space so that we understand part of their experiences, at least try to figure out, maybe this person, okay, might be a little bit overwhelmed. I might not feel overwhelmed, but that doesn't mean they don't feel overwhelmed. Living with our parents, hopefully it's a temporary arrangement. Those of you who live by themselves, once the quarantine is over, will go back to their natural and usual routine in terms of where they live. So it might also be a good bonding experience, and it might be a good chance to find out more about our parents or our family. The fourth part I wanted to address at the problem-solving section will be to utilize your school resources. It's very important to remember that besides you are away from the campus, you're still within the campus. So we are a phone call away, or it may be an email away. And what I'm talking about is that both universities offer psychological support through counseling lines. We have created a slide for the information for each university, so you will see it at the end of the of the slideshow. If you run into any problems with your online classes or you have any concerns with the new ways of grading, please do consult with your professors. They're there for that. And it's imperative to get in touch with them. They might be the only one who can solve some of these difficulties you might be facing. Use online exercises by the sports centers. So if you really need to get into your physical activities, the sports centers have created online classes so that they can provide that for you, even though the gym is not open. Keep in touch with Facebook page of your university and the Center of Student Development to keep up the new updates on services, tools, suggestions, and other stuff that might be going on. So thank you. I pass on the microphone to Vasiliki to continue the third part.
Hi, over to me. So quite a few of you have mentioned that handling problems at this time is something that seems to be a real issue, but also I think that an additional concern that we have during this time is that our mood might be dropping, or that we might be feeling more anxious, or that we're feeling more stressed. And as I mentioned at the beginning, especially those of us who are allergic to uncertainty might be a little bit more vulnerable to these feelings of anxiety and worry, or even this kind of dullness in our mood due to the lockdown situation of not kind of connecting with the people that we care with and so on. So one of the strategies that I'd like us to kind of focus on today is building this idea of becoming a grateful observer. Now, this is an important concept, and a lot of the research in recent years has shown us that the way in which we approach situations and the way in which you observe situations and what you choose to observe, in fact, affects our mental state. So studies do show that people who view the things that they're grateful for in their lives seem to be happier, more optimistic about the future, and feel better in their lives generally. So this is something that I'd like us to discuss and see how we can build up a more grateful outlook during this COVID-19 challenge. Viewing things from this gratefulness perspective would allow for additional and new emotions to emerge alongside anxiety, worry, and sadness sometimes. It kind of just gives a different focus on things, which sometimes also kind of elicits a sense of self-kindness and creativity. So let's take a look at how we can do this. So I'll ask you to join me on chat on your observations on these points. So what I will invite you to do is to consider finding some value and meaning during these uncertain times. So I'll go through 3 questions with you, and then therefore after this I will invite you to go through these questions by yourselves in your own time to kind of train your mind towards this grateful observer perspective. So the first question would be, what can be some positive developments or some advantages of this current situation in the development in your relationships with your friends and loved ones? So what has changed basically in your relationships with your friends and loved ones that you're actually grateful for and you're actually experiencing as a useful development or a positive development? I'm just going to give you a couple of moments to see if there's any comments on that. So while you're kind of considering this, I want to say that physical distance from friends and loved ones can actually be restrictive in many ways, but during these uncertain times, it may have actually highlighted certain aspects of these relationships that you may have not noticed before. For example, it may even have encouraged you to reach out to friends or people that you hadn't really kept very close contact with. I see that people are kind of zooming into the challenging aspects of relationships during this difficult time. And this is what our minds do. I want to kind of point that out, that our minds are trained at looking at the negatives and the difficult. And so therefore, being a grateful observer, kind of noticing the things that are useful and encouraging, is a little more difficult than actually noticing the difficult. So therefore, it requires a bit of a step towards that direction. But a lot of people have said that, I'm calling up friends that I haven't talked to in a very long time. In addition, this period may have provided you with ideas of how to connect with people in ways that were available to you before, but you weren't really using them. Friends that are abroad, the other side of the planet, and so on. Another area might be that you've realized that you're not so reliant on social connections as you once thought. It may be that you're discovering that you like the company of yourself, or that you like your independent thinking. It may also that you're realizing that some relationships are closer and more important to you than you had realized before. Okay, so it's important to investigate, what's changed in relationships and see the value of those relationships in our lives, apart from just seeing the difficult and the challenging elements within them. Another question that I wanted to kind of put upon ourselves is, what can be some advantages of these uncertain times on your performance or your satisfaction in your learning activities? So again, as I allow you some time to ponder on that, and of course, the mind might respond with some negative things, but again, it's this task, it's this challenge to investigate and see, what am I grateful for in terms of my learning activities? So although clearly not all positive, some people may have noticed that going to classes has been easier, as they don't have to get out of bed so early, or that they can actually get to class in their pajamas. People have mentioned that, the fact that sessions are now recorded online means that they can review difficult areas in their lectures in the lectures at a later time. This is a good point there, that we notice being grateful to being very more adaptable or more agile, and kind of being grateful for being agile and flexible in that way. Other people may have found themselves to be more inspired to learn new subjects, or kind of are engaging in different methods of learning online. So if we look at it from this fresh perspective of what am I grateful for, we might actually notice that our mood is shifting along with this process. So the third question that I'd like to kind of consider with you is, what can be some advantages or some areas in which I'm grateful for regarding my creativity and innovation? And this is quite an interesting one. These are not the only three questions that you can ask yourself about what you are grateful for, but this third is quite an important one, because in fact, historically, challenging times have been the seed for new ideas. Okay, during challenging times, wars, economic turmoil, amazing inventions and ideas have taken hold in humanity. So, for example, very recent time that you will remember, during the 2010-13 financial crisis, a number of new businesses emerged that flourished during the uncertain economic times. So sometimes a crisis, a difficult period, can actually allow the creativity juices to kind of flow, and that might be something to be aware of. In the safety of our homes, creativity can also grow. People can experiment with new foods, new cakes, sweets, homemade creations, new business ideas, or even try out new activities or new hobbies. Okay, that's from me on this section. I'm going to hand over to Yoria now to go through the next topic. Thank you.
Hi from me again. Sorry, I cannot see the PowerPoint. Aslaki, did we use that? Do you
Give me
see
a
it?
It's disappeared. Give me a moment. I'm uploading it. You
Okay,
can start.
okay.
Do you want to start with your presentation while
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I have it in front of me. Okay, so the other part we wanted to talk about is what can I actually do at home so that I am more active. Sedentary behavior and low levels of physical activity can have negative effects on the health, well-being, and quality of life for individuals. Self-quarantine can also cause additional stress and challenge the mental health of us people. Therefore, physical activity and relaxation techniques can be valuable tools to help remain calm and continue to protect our health during this time. Remember that physical activity is a very good way to get us going with endorphins and happy feelings. So what can I do to be more active during quarantine? I mean, it really sounds paradoxical, but we need three ingredients: creativity, motivation, and physical participation. There are some steps that you can actually do during your day that they're very, very basic and do not require a lot of effort and a lot of expertise, but they can give you like a boost. So hear this out. Take short active breaks during the day. So short bouts of physical activity can adapt to the weekly recommendations. You can use some exercises that you can find online, or some exercises. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. You can find some on Instagram, on YouTube, and you can keep them going as your routine exercise for stretching or for yoga. Dancing in the house because you like the music, or if there are like any other people around the house, if you have like smaller siblings, you can play with them, or even performing domestic chores like something physical, such as cleaning or gardening, are other ways to stay active at home. You can follow an online exercise class, maybe something more vigorous than what I mentioned before. Take advantage of the wealth of online exercise classes. Um, a bunch of them are free and can be found easily. If you have no experience performing these exercises, be cautious and aware of your limitations. Um, so it's very important to take into consideration what we can do and what we cannot. You can walk. Walking around, especially during springtime, it's ideal. It's the season that welcomes us to go out and experience the warm weather or see the beautiful flowers or enjoy the beautiful weather. So you can walk and enjoy a stroll around your neighborhood, or if you have a pet, like maybe you can go for a walk with them as well. During your walk, you definitely need to make sure you maintain the precautions in regards the distancing from other people. I know that some of you mentioned earlier that you study a lot and there's a lot of material that you need to cover. So while you study and while you sit watching an online class, it's very important to take few breaks to stand up, like give your body the ability to stand up, reduce the sedentary time as much as possible. It's ideal to interrupt sitting every 30 minutes. Consider setting up a standing desk by using a high table or stacking a pile of books or other materials to continue working while standing. You can also relax. So You do not have to do anything too complicated, but meditation and deep breaths can help you remain calm. A few examples of relaxation techniques will be provided shortly. And we also provided a link in the chat room, and I hope everybody can see it, for meditation. Some other activities is to listen to music or cook, play chess, do puzzles online, even rearrange your house. I mean, rearranging, getting rid of stuff that we don't need, clearing out the clutter can make us feel refreshed and rejuvenated. We can also pick up a new hobby like gardening, and we can actually be creative with that. By taking care of something during this period, it really gives us a boost on our sense of gratefulness. You can meditate. You can just do a spa day. Sorry. You could do Sudoku, listen to podcasts, or actually read books. There are so many books that I'm pretty sure you wanted to read and you never had the chance. Well, now is the time. Vasiliki.
All right, great, thanks. So we're reaching the end of our webinar on different strategies, and we've covered, ways of thinking about uncertainty that aren't particularly useful. We've covered the 3 important questions to specify whether the worry can really be transformed into a problem to tackle with. We've looked at the steps of problem solving. We've provided a worksheet to go through problem solving if that's something that you feel is relevant to you. We've looked at good communication skills in the context of problem solving. We've also looked at this approach at boosting our mental health, which is grateful observing, kind of shifting our focus from seeing the negatives to seeing the things that we are grateful for. And in the chat, I actually made a recommendation that you can even ask yourself this question every evening before you go to bed. What is something that I was grateful for today in the current climates? We've also covered the importance of having a good routine, that routine that would need to include something that is enjoyable, something that gets us to be physically active, mentally inspired, as well as hard work and studying, of course. So to wrap this up, I wanted to share with you a couple of strategies for managing intense anxiety, because for some of us, this time, those of us, especially that are allergic to uncertainty, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a really stressful time. And, even if we include the best strategies ever and we have really good routines and we problem solve the things that show up, it is likely that at times we might feel kind of an unsettling anxiety sensation in the body. Before I go into the actual exercises and wrap this up, I wanted to say that, of course, anxiety is a normal human reaction to uncertain times, and specifically to scary information, such as the information that we're kind of currently plagued in, the current news. Now, anxiety as a feeling tends to work in really tricky ways inside our minds. So it can sometimes tempt our minds into focusing on threatening pieces of information, resulting in getting us additionally worried, having additional thoughts or scary predictions. And the more we tend to focus on these threatening messages that our mind gives us, or these threatening sensations in the body, the more we get worked up, and the more our anxiety might flare up like a wave that is kind of collecting water as it goes up through the ocean, and it becomes larger and larger and larger. And so if we follow the path of anxiety growth and we kind of collect water and water, allowing our anxiety wave to become bigger and bigger, we might find ourselves in a state that we kind of call, an anxiety attack, that we feel strong sensations of anxiety in the body or an overwhelming sense of physical anxiety. So what can we do when we feel that the wave of anxiety is picking up pace, to kind of settle ourselves? So I'm going to introduce a couple of activities that are called grounding. So grounding is a good method to get a better handle on our anxiety when it enters the experience. It provides a much needed sense of comfort and a practical method to support yourself so that you feel more skilled in the moment that you've got this physical sense of anxiety. And there are many different types of grounding techniques, but most of them will focus on using all the five senses so that they involve things that you can see, that you can touch, that you can hear, and you can sense. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of examples of grounding. One of them I'm going to talk about because we can't really do it over webcast, and the other one we're actually going to do together as an exercise as we're wrapping up the seminar. So the first one, sorry, you're probably listening. My home environment isn't particularly calm either, as you can hear. There we go. So the first one is using the temperature of water. So a good strategy when you're feeling overwhelmed and caught up in anxiety is to run your hands and your face under cold water. So you want to focus on the water temperature and how it feels on your fingertips, on your palms, and the back of your hands. And you want to focus as well on the water temperature on your face. Now, notice how the water temperature will feel differently at different parts of your body. So some part of your body will be more sensitive to the coldness of the water. This is the detail that we want you to focus on to get that feeling of grounding yourself in the sensations of the water contacting your skin. Now, what you can do next is you can actually change the temperature of the water from cold to warm, not hot, and then back again. And what you will notice is that this change in the temperature kind of highlights the feeling of sensation of the water against your skin, and it intensifies your focus on the sensations. This is a good grounding exercise. A similar grounding exercise would be holding a piece of ice in your hand and noticing the change in sensations in your palm as you do this. So this is quite a recommended technique. And I'm going to finish off with the 5-4-3-2-1 method, which is a lovely grounding exercise. And I'll invite you to do this with me now as we're wrapping up here. So let's do this now. I'll ask you to kind of settle into your chair. Yeah, thank you. That's a really good comment about another grounding technique. Thanks for that comment. So let me just say, if you can settle into your chair, land your feet in the ground, and if you can follow my instructions. If you want, you can close your eyes. At certain parts of the exercise, though, you'll need to open your eyes to kind of follow the instructions. So do it in your own way. So to begin with, I will ask you to pay attention to various aspects of your environment and your current experience. So make an effort to notice all the little things that you wouldn't usually pay attention to in this exercise. Okay. So now concentrate deeply and list 5 things that you can hear. You may notice sounds from inside or outside your space, from inside or outside your body. It may be things that you do not usually pay attention to. Like my background, or the creaking of the door, or footsteps outside your house, or even the humming sound of your computer. Now notice in detail 4 things that you can see. These things might be inside your room, outside the window. They might be near you or they might be further away. Notice the colors of these items, or notice the scene that lays in front of you. Notice the textures, the materials that these objects that you're seeing are made of. These might be things that you do not usually examine with your eyes, like the texture of the color of your desk or the flecks in the carpet or your drapes. Now, identify 3 things that you can touch from where you're sitting. Reach out and touch them. These may be things that you do not usually interact with in a physical sense. Feel the sense of the material underneath your fingertips. Notice if the material is hard or soft, smooth or rough. And just really stay with the senses on this one. Now notice 2 things that you can smell from where you are sitting. You may need to inhale deeply and with curiosity. It may be the smell of the room you're sitting in, the smell of the world outside, the fabric softener on your clothes, the smell of soap or perfume on your body. It may even be the smell of plastic from your office equipment. And now finally, notice one thing that you can taste. There might be an existing taste in your mouth from something that you ate earlier, or a bitter taste from not having eaten in a while, or a coffee taste. Or there may be an item you can drink or eat in your close vicinity. Notice what it tastes like in your mouth and tongue. So as we finish this exercise, know that these steps can be repeated in different environments, at different times, different times of the day to better ground yourself. If you feel that you're kind of riding that wave of anxiety and you want to get a better hold of yourself. Okay, so as we're reaching the end, I wanted to kind of just highlight that both universities have come up with a plan to support students psychologically during this difficult time. There's information on the support line for the back, as well as UCLan Cyprus on this slide. I will also share the presentation through chat so that you have this information if you're interested. And this is a thank you for us. It was such a pleasure to have people who were interested in this webinar and that we had participation. And I'm going to leave this link open for a while longer in case you have any particular requests for any future webinars. Thank you very much from me. Maria, over to you.
Yes, thank you for being present in this seminar and in the given moment, for going through all the steps and for being so interactive with us. It was very, very enriching for both of us as well. Vasiliki, it's been a joy working with you. It's always wonderful. If there are any questions from now on that maybe we haven't responded through the chat room, or if there are any more private questions that you would like to pose and ask, we have our contact information on the initial poster we have sent out for the invitation. And hopefully we will be able to provide other webinars soon. Thank you again.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Just to point out before we switch off that, as Yuria mentioned at the beginning, this session was recorded, but in case it's going to be used, we're going to make sure that any identifying information is covered on the video that is going to be shared. So thanks again. Have a lovely evening. And do contact us if you have any additional questions.
Before
Bye.
we head out, I'm going to say that I'm going to share again the links that I've sent out earlier in case that a few people didn't get it before. So I'm sharing the links for the activities that I presented, maybe some things that you can use on YouTube or follow some instructions. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the presentation is also uploaded in a moment. If anyone wants to download it, stick around until it uploads. Okay.